Next time you go, you let me know. Please silence your phones and beepers, whatever you have. This board comprises of 7 members. 4 members of the board should constitute a quorum. The affirmative vote of 4 members should be necessary for the adoption of any motion. Is this, I don't think this is working. There we go. Okay. If only 4 members of the board are present, the applicant may request and be entitled to a continuance to the next regularly scheduled meeting of the board. If the matter is continued due to the lack of quorum, the chairperson or secretary of the board may set a special meeting to consider such matter. In the event that 4 votes are not obtained, the applicant, except in the case of a comprehensive plan amendment, may request a continuance to allow the application to proceed to the city commission without a recommendation. For those members of the public who are appearing on the Zoom platform and wish to testify, you must be visible to the court reporter to be sworn in. Otherwise, if you speak without being sworn in, your comments may not be evidentiary value. Lobbyist registration disclosure. Any person who acts as a lobbyist must register with the city clerk pursuant to the city code. As vice chair, I now officially call the City of Coral Gables Planning and Zoning meeting of July 13 to order, and the time is 6:02. Jill, can you please call the roll?
Alex Bucelo.
Here.
Claudia Miro.
Here.
Luis Revuelta.
Here.
Benny Torrey.
Here.
Chip Withers.
Here.
A.B. Eisenstadt.
Here.
Robert Behar.
Here. Notice regarding ex parte communication. Please be advised that this board is a quasi-judicial board, which requires board members to disclose all ex parte communication and site visits. An ex parte communication is defined as any contact, communication, conversation, correspondence, memorandum, or any other written or verbal communication that takes place outside a public hearing between a member of the public and a member of the quasi-judicial board regarding matters to be heard by the board. If anyone made any contact with a board member regarding an issue before the board member must state on the record the existence of the ex parte communication, the party who originated the communication. Also, if the board members conducted a site visit especially related to the case before the board, the board member must also disclose such a visit. In either case, the board member must state on the record whether the ex parte communication and or site visit will affect the board member's ability to impartially consider the evidence to be presented regarding the matter. The board member should also state that his or her decision will be based on substantial, competent evidence testimony presented on the record. Does any member of the board have such communication or site visit to disclose at this time? Nope. Sworn in. Anyone who speaks this evening must complete the roster on the podium, and over there, Jill will have it. We ask that you print clearly so that the official records of your name and address will be correct. Now, with the exception of the attorney, all persons physically in the chambers who will speak on the agenda items before us tonight, please rise to be sworn in. Zoom platform participants. I will ask any person wishing to speak on tonight's agenda item to please open your chat and send a direct message to Jill Menendez stating that you would like to speak before the board and include your full name. Jill will call you when it's your turn to speak. I ask to be concise and, for the interest of time, keep your comments to a minimum. Zoom platform participant. After Zoom platform participants are done, I will ask the phone participant to comment on tonight's agendas as well. Again, I will ask to be concise in the interest of time on your comments. Remote participation. Unfortunately, Mr. Eisenstein is due to circumstances, he's not able to be present with us tonight in the meeting. Therefore, we will need a vote to allow Mr. Eisenstein to participate remotely. At this time, I will ask for a motion from one of our board members to allow for Mr. Eisenstein to participate.
I'll make it.
Let me just add that the board has to make a finding, and it's within your discretion that to allow Mr. Eisenstadt to participate, that there's an extraordinary circumstance. But it's within the discretion of the board. So the motion would be finding that there's an extraordinary circumstance and that Mr. Eisenstadt is allowed to appear and vote remotely.
So move.
I make the motion. Second.
Okay. We have a first and a motion, a second. Jill, can you please call the roll?
Yes.
Luis Revuelta,
Yes.
Benny Torre,
Yes.
Chip Withers,
Yes.
Alex Bucello,
Yes.
Robert Behar,
Yes.
A.B. Eisenstadt.
Only the members present can vote for him. He can't vote for himself. Okay.
All right, so we're good.
Maybe if we could, since we've heard Mr. Eisenstadt, if he could just, for the record, just identify himself. Mr. Eisenstadt, you want to just state your name for the record and that you're participating?
Yes, A.B. Eisenstadt, and I am participating.
Very good. Thank you very
Thank you.
much.
Now, next item, the approval of the June 8th meeting. Do I have a motion for approval?
Make the motion. To approve.
It's approval of the minutes,
Yeah.
right?
Yes.
So move.
Second.
Jill?
Luis Revuelta,
Yes.
Benny Torre,
Yes.
Chip Withers,
Yes.
A.B. Eisenstadt,
Yes.
Alex Bucello,
Yes.
Claudia Miro,
Yes.
Robert Behar.
Yes. Procedure we will use tonight. We will first identify the agenda item by Mr. Culler, presentation by the applicant, presentation by staff. We will open it to the public in chamber, to the public comments in chamber. Comments include Zoom platform, phone platform. I will then close the public comments. We will have a board discussion. We will make a motion, discussion, and second of the motion, the board will have a final comment. We will take a vote. Tonight we have one item, but before we get to that item and before Mr. Culler goes a little bit further explanation while we're here, I want to ask that in the meeting of June 8th, we had two board members that were not present at the time. I want to make sure that you have read the transcript and you're familiar with the findings that are on those transcript, and that you're ready and prepared to hear the item tonight. Mr. Torre?
100%. Yes.
Mr. Bucello?
Same here.
Mr. Collar, you may want to elaborate a little bit more now.
Yes, I'd like to just have a preliminary statement as to why we're here tonight. Mr. Chairman, members of the Planning and Zoning Board, I would like to explain how we got here and why this is being heard. You will recall when this was heard on June 8th, there were multiple items related to this project. One of the items that is now back before you is the ordinance to amend the comprehensive plan for this project. The zoning code requires that there be a minimum of 4 votes to recommend either approval or denial of an item. Otherwise, the item goes to the commission without a recommendation. At the June hearing, there was a vote of 3-2 to recommend denial of the comprehensive plan amendment, so it went without a recommendation. Upon review of state law, because the city has designated you as a local planning agency, the board is required to make a recommendation either for approval or denial of the comprehensive plan amendment. The city attorney has issued an opinion that the city code must be read in paramateria with the statute and the city code cannot be construed to deny an applicant to present before the city commission in perpetuity. Accordingly, the city attorney has determined that the item would be presented back to you one more time to attempt to obtain the minimum 4 votes, and upon failing that, the matter will be heard by the commission with an explanation of all motions to recommend either for or against the proposed ordinance, with an accounting of the number of votes for and against the motion in each instance. Mr. Chairman, at this point, I'd like to read the item in for the record.
Go ahead, please.
Item E1, an ordinance of the City Commission of Coral Gables, Florida, amending the future land use map of the City of Coral Gables Comprehensive Plan pursuant to Zoning Code Article 14 process, Section 14-213, Comprehensive Plan text and map amendments and small-scale amendment procedures, from commercial low-rise intensity to commercial high-rise intensity for lots 8 through 21, less than 1/2 of Lot 8, Block 29 cross section, together with that portion of the 20-foot platted alley lying east of lots 11 and 19 of said Block 29, 3000 Ponce de Leon Boulevard, 216 and 224 Catalonia, 203 University Drive, and 225 Malaga, Coral Gables, Florida, providing repeal provision, severability clause, and providing for an effective date. Item E1, public hearing.
What I'd like to do is, to the applicant, I will open it up so you have a 10-minute presentation. Your presentation tonight, I'm going to limit it to 10 minutes, and same with staff. You have a maximum of 10 minutes. Public comments, for those that are going to be speaking for the first time, again, please sign up. You will have 3 minutes. If you already spoke in the previous meeting, you only have 1 minute for comments. So with that in mind, and now we call the applicant to do your presentation.
Good evening. I'd like to thank you for hearing us this evening again. Obviously, we heard from Mr. Collier the details as to why. My name is Anthony Diuri, address at 1450 Brickell Avenue. We're here today explicitly just on the single item of the land use amendment, the land use plan amendment. I don't have a tie with me today. I apologize because I'm having trouble with that. I'm just giving you 3 simple sheets that came from our prior PowerPoint, which show, let me get a copy more, which show the massings in the neighborhood. You heard at the last meeting, this project is so small at this point in time that it does not require a traffic study. As of right, we can ask for 125 units. We're going for 80. If you look at this massing study, you'll see our project on the left-hand side at 149 feet for only a portion of the building. You'll see the majority of the massing in the building is at 75 feet. Adjacent to that is the Plaza Tower 3, Plaza Tower 1, Plaza Tower 2, Plaza Tower 4. To the right of that is 3100 Ponce de Leon, in which a future project could be built. That does not exist today, but that is an exemplar of a massing that could be even to the south of us. And then lastly, there is the Da Vinci Condominium Tower, which is equidistant, if not closer, to the majority of the neighbors that were speaking in opposition to our project. This project was reviewed by staff. If you look at the second sheet, there you have the land use map with the corresponding heights. You'll see our project is the only one in pink. It is, in fact, the outlier. And in the following sheet, you'll see the excerpt chart from the staff recommendation with 6 different points that were considered by staff in their 23-page report. I'll note that our project was approved on all points, but in particular, the land use change, taking into context and character of the neighborhood, and those massings that you see there, and only coming at 149 feet for that portion of the building, did not receive a conditional approval. It received an approval without conditions. The staff report in and of itself constitutes competent substantial evidence. As Mr. Behar read, decisions have to be made on competent substantial evidence, and the staff report in and of itself establishes that. It is for other parties to establish that they themselves have some competent substantial evidence in opposition to the professional staff report. This neighborhood is between the Plaza, the largest project in the history of Coral Gables. It's between a 125,000 square foot hospital, the Coral Gables Hospital. It's between two of the largest right-of-ways, one abutting the city, 37th, one cutting straight through the city at Ponce de Leon Boulevard, two commercial corridors on Ponce and the other on 37th. And this sandwich is in this neighborhood. This is not a neighborhood that is free of commercial development. This is not a neighborhood that is free of height. In fact, it would not be the first, second, third, fourth, fifth tallest building in the immediate vicinity. These towers that you see here are or would be closer to the closest speaker in regards to our project. Of interesting note, when the plaza was built, they had to demolish 2801 Ponce de Leon Boulevard. If some of you recall, there was a very interesting demolition where the whole building didn't go down in one shot, and they had to come back the next week and knock it down. Let's just say that in 1969, they built buildings differently, I suppose. I mentioned 1969 because that was the year that that building at 2801 Ponce was constructed. That was the first, not just the first craft section high-rise commercial development, but it was the first high-rise commercial development in the business district or the downtown general area. That building itself was 13 stories, which is taller than the building we're proposing today. That building was replaced by the plaza with all its different towers. I'm going to make two quick points, and I'll wrap it up. I mentioned last time we were here the case of the Fontainebleau versus 4525, which is the Eden Rock. In that case, it was alleged that construction of a Fontainebleau building, and I'm reading directly from the case now, would interfere with the light, air, and enjoyment of the Eden Rock to catch such a shadow as to render it unfit for the use and enjoyment of its guests, to create irreparable injury to the Eden Rock. The case goes on to say, no American decision has ever been cited or independent research been revealed that provides adjacent property owners unobstructed light and air views from adjoining land. There is no legal right to free flow of light from adjoining land, and it's universally held where a structure serves its useful and beneficial purpose, even though it causes injury to an adjoining landowner, regardless of the fact the structure may have been erected partly to spite. There are no adjacent landowners in this case. They're all across the street on Ponce, and they're all within 50. The closest one is actually only 50 feet from the plaza. I'll leave you lastly with a very interesting case that I also cited last time. This is a Coral Gables case from 2017. And in this case, it was stated by the residents that factors regarding, that the project created a visual obstruction, that the building was not in reasonable proportion with the area, as opposed to a grossly oversized project, that it's 3 times the size permitted by the current code. The zoning code did not permit the project as presented. That the code, we created commented on the code's historic impact on Coral Gables' appearance. But the petitioner and the resident did not cite any easement or covenant or special property interest that they had being impacted by the project, and therefore the individual did not have standing. And what was held that day in the case of Friggles versus the City of Coral Gables is that the competent substantial evidence, the staff report carried the day. And so I present that to you today with the clear evidence of the staff report, the non-conditional approval, the 149-foot height in the massing and the other massings in the area, which is a commercial district sandwiching in a couple of residential blocks, which are the San Sebastian neighbors. And I understand they're very close to the plaza. They're sandwiched in between the hospital. But that doesn't mean that we should take that, which is completely extraneous to this project, to our prejudice. I thank you very much, and I yield my time.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ruby. If I could have staff do a presentation, please.
The PowerPoint, please. Jennifer Garcia, City Planner. Thank you. Can I advance it, please? Okay, there we go. All right, so the property we're talking about today is on Ponce and University, two major thoroughfares in Coral Gables. Now, remember the last time we talked about 5 requests, and they were just talking about 1 request, that's a change of land use. So the request is to change the land use from commercial low-rise to commercial high-rise. Now, this is just about height, nothing to do with use, nothing to do with density, nothing to do with FAR. This is all about the height, because the FAR and the density is all the same between all those land use designations. So this is a very quick, wordy timeline about different heights, the history of heights in Coral Gables, and how it first started with different height districts. And that was based on the width of the street to the height of the buildings. And that eventually evolved into the commission approving different types of heights and putting those in the footnotes in the zoning code maps, in the use maps, actually. And then Mediterranean bonus came along, and that actually tried to standardize the height throughout the city and allow different bonuses for depending on different levels. And most recently, the commission actually adopted, changed the comp plan to allow the height to go a little bit more to 205 feet in some places in the downtown business district. So looking at how that's changed over time, you can see on the top left, that's kind of an original diagram of how simple height used to be regulated back in the 1920s and 30s of Coral Gables. And that has changed over time. There's been site specifics that basically blanket the area without any regard to existing conditions or thoroughfares or any hierarchy. And eventually in the 90s, it looks like they started to incorporate 3 different tiers that we know today, the low-rise, mid-rise, and high-rise, and categories in that, regulating that by number of stories. And today, you can see the subject property outlined in the dark in the bottom right, and that's what we have today. It's a little bit of a hodgepodge, to say the least, as far as hierarchy of high-rise and medium-rise and low-rise. You can still see the hierarchy of the major thoroughfares having that higher intensity. So this is a screenshot from Gridix from our website, and you can see the zoning map. I'm sorry, it's not zoning map. The land use map, which is reflected in the zoning map. The land use map showing the different building forms that are on those properties. So you can see this property is in between high rise to the south, which is where the courthouse is, and across the street from the plaza, which the applicant has been speaking about. And it's also abutting a legal non-conforming building that's also on low rise, but obviously clearly above the 50-foot height limitation. So staff determined this application is consistent with the comprehensive plan's goals, objectives, and policies, and recommend approval.
Jennifer, I have a question. Did we figure out why the property just to the south, when that property was designated high-rise?
I haven't been able to research that. The maps that I just showed it as high-rise.
Right.
From I think it was 1998. So sometime between then.
Lot 34.
I did a little research. That was
134.
that was done by Mort Guilford at that time that you just mentioned.
In the 90s.
That was something that he did on his own. Mort
The
Guilford.
90s?
Mort Guilford at, forget the date you just said. I heard it earlier, I just don't remember. But you said that
That's a parking lot in front of the.
it's the entire site where the courthouse is.
But there's a courthouse now. That used to be a grocery stores way back. But, all right, but we don't know definitely when that was done.
In the 90s. Like
Correct. I don't know the year.
All right.
Right.
Okay.
And one question, on lot 20, on block 26, Do we have, does anybody know?
Speak on the mic, please.
Sorry, on block 26, do we know the height of the building that is right there, the new building? I think with Subizarreta.
The Zuby building?
80, it's in this plan. The paper you got, is that 250 Catalonia right
here?
there? Is it not the one that you meant? I believe it's there.
I don't think it's.
Is it not that one? 250 Catalonia is not that?
Catalonia. Is that the one that's abutting to the
north.
west?
Just immediately to the north. I
Zuby
just
building.
wanted for
With
context.
the birds that are on the parking lot?
Yes, yes.
I believe that,
Yeah.
kind of PowerPoint really quick.
100.
I think
Okay.
the height was on there. What is that? 72 feet.
72, okay.
Oh, there you go. So which is the one you bring here, which says 250 Catalonia? Is that the one on that photograph?
I believe that's the one with the rooftop, right?
But there's one here that says 250 Catalonia.
Sorry, just responding to the question. That is the property immediately to the west of our project.
It's actually to the north, the one that I was
No,
asking.
not the Zuby building, the 250 Catalonia is immediately to the west of us, is that correct?
Oh, that was the old Jerome Filer.
Correct.
And that's
Solid,
yeah.
it's a solid wall.
Right.
Yes. I was just wondering if anybody know the height.
And that one right
Building
there,
Immediately to the north.
80 feet. Is that correct?
I believe that is correct. It's a legal non-conforming use.
Okay.
Okay.
All right, thank you, Jennifer.
Can I just ask one question? What was the land use under the plaza before it was built?
That's complicated. It consisted of three, the high-rise, medium, and mid and low. But it kind of changed its formation. I think
Because they did
Vinny has a copy
They
of it,
did a
actually.
PAD on it, right?
Right.
Yeah. So
So
before,
it was high-rise, though. It wasn't like it was
yes, and it was
medium and-
high-rise actually when it was the old Spanish Village as well. But there was single-family associated with that block, and that's what
Okay.
changed. That was a big change.
All right, I just want to make sure, because the applicant mentioned that, there's our building is deserving of this height because that building is deserving, that building is built, but that building really didn't go from a mid-rise or a low-rise. It went from a high-rise to just higher than a
To
high-rise.
high-rise, right.
Okay, I just want to make sure of that.
Thank you. Again, I'm going to open up to the public comments in the chamber. I will ask the speakers to keep it, the new speakers to keep it to 3 minutes. Jill, if you would like to call and let me know, can you let me know who had already spoken and who is, if that's possible?
I'll try my best.
Okay.
Maria Cruz, she spoke previously.
Good evening, Ms. Cruz.
Maria Cruz, 1447 Miller Road. Of course, I don't live in this area, but like I've said many times, anything that affects the city of Coral Gables is my problem. And I'm sorry, when we spoke last time, we spoke about a whole bunch of stuff. Today, we're limiting to this, so we need to be able to talk. First of all, I would like to
But
go on
don't
the
forget,
record.
Maria, excuse me, don't forget that we talked about this last time. This is
But
coming
not
back.
specifically, so there's some specific stuff that's just for this and not for the general. First of all, I would like to put on the record that as a resident of the city of Coral Gables, I'm very offended how this meeting has been rescheduled and affecting people that made plans to be out of town because this is the only month of the year that the kids didn't have school at all. So the residents that made plans because there was no meeting this month had to scramble to be able to be here. That is unfair, very unfair, and the city should have known better. There is a meeting in August. This could have been heard in August. All right. We're here to ask that this developer not be allowed to build what he wants. We're here to ask you to grant him to build what he's entitled, what he has as a right to build. When he bought the property, he knew what the limitations were. This has to stop. You cannot buy something and then come back and double what you know you can build That is not right. When the people bought their homes, they are limited. They can only build what they can do there. So should the developers. The residents, I'm offended by the fact that this should be approved because there are other buildings already. That's exactly why it shouldn't be approved. Enough is enough. This neighborhood deserves to be a Coral Gables neighborhood. This is not Brickell Avenue. They did not choose to live there. This is not Miami Beach. They bought their homes knowing that that's a residential neighborhood. Now, because the plaza got away with it, now because there are other buildings that got away with it, now we're going to keep building there. Wrong. That's a bad example. Because they're already there, this should not be. We should not have a Brickell West. Approving this project would only add insult to injury to these people. This is absolutely ridiculous. All we're here to ask you is hold the line. There's no reason for this monstrosity to be built across from the other monstrosity. Please vote no.
Thank you, Ms. Cruz. Please, I will ask to refrain. If you do that, you will be asked to leave. Do not clap, please. Thank you. Jill, next.
Pardon, I had a question for the,
Mr. Chairman, you can the applicant has a right of cross-examination in a quasi-judicial proceeding. That's why we don't allow clapping, because this is a quasi-judicial proceeding. You as chair can choose to have him as part of his rebuttal to ask questions of witnesses, and you can schedule at that time, or if you want him to ask his questions as each witness gets up and sits down, it's your choice how you want to schedule it.
Mr. Rubio, I would prefer if you keep your questions towards the end. I want to be able to get the public, the comments, and then I will allow you to question and rebuttal any comment from the public.
And I would ask the members of the public to remain who have spoken so that the attorney has the opportunity to ask you a question if he so chooses.
it would make it infinitely more difficult for me to remember what every single person said, because I just have very specific questions for them in regards to the comment they made.
Okay.
I will be.
What I'm gonna do is I'm
incredibly-
gonna ask the board if you guys are okay, we will allow for that to take place. Go ahead, Mr. Thank
Mr. Chair, I have a question. Did we do this last time? Did you ask questions of the speakers last time? Because I know there was a number of speakers, and I don't remember that we went one by one, or did you ask your questions at the end? I'm not sure. Do you remember?
I don't believe that he was given the opportunity to ask the questions.
So we're going to do it differently this time?
No, we did at the last meeting where the request was made of the attorney to cross-examine witnesses. I advised the board at that time that you could hold those questions to the rebuttal, or you could do it as each witness got up. The decision was to hold it for rebuttal. So I believe the attorney should be given the opportunity to ask the questions even today, but it's your choice how you want to order those questions.
I'm just asking if we did this at the end, did he do his questions for rebuttal at the end last time, or if this is something new that we're doing this time? I understand the opportunity. I'm just saying, did we do this last time? Because if we didn't, I just want to put it on the
There were no questions asked last time, but at the previous meeting, the chair said to hold your questions and for rebuttal, and I think I made the statement then I'd ask all witnesses to remain until the completion of the testimony.
I would only add that it was, at the end of that, it was almost prejudicial, or it was. I could not keep track of all the different comments made by all the different people to make them. And I'm not here to make it adversarial. I just want to clarify for the record certain points, because obviously we're here to make sure the decisions that are made aren't outside the bounds of the rules.
I have one comment, one concern that I have is that if somebody makes statements and for whatever reason they have to leave, how are we going to prevent that? And then it becomes an awkward situation. For me, I don't mind him asking the questions on the spot and getting to the But that's my opinion.
Let's go ahead and proceed with your questions at this time.
Ms. Cruz? Mrs. Cruz, I apologize.
It'll be 54 years this summer, so I have that title.
Congratulations.
Do you have any easements, covenants, or other property interests that are impacted by this project?
I don't even know what an easement is, so why are
Okay.
you asking?
How is your property specifically impacted by this project?
This property is impacted by my property, no. My way of life is impacted because I do not want to drive in between two gigantic buildings. And I drive Ponce every day of my life.
Okay. Are you aware that 2801's Ponce Tower existed prior to the plaza?
I don't even know where 2801 is. All I know is that the plaza is a humongous building, and all I know is that you asking to do this now is a way of intimidating some of the people that will find it difficult to express what they feel because they're going to be embarrassed by your questions. I'm sorry.
I only wanted to ask if you were aware there was a 13-story building that existed where the plaza is before it.
It frankly doesn't make any difference to me.
That's it.
That
That's
what
all.
is there already is the reason why we should not have this, because that one is way too big already.
Thank you, Mrs. Cruz. Okay. Jill, next speaker, please.
Oscar Sosa. He also spoke previously.
Please try to keep it as short as possible.
Good evening. Oscar Sosa, 116 San Sebastian Avenue. Again, I'm in front of you guys asking you not to approve this project. We're not against construction. We're not against development. We just want reasonable development. I was in Palm Beach. My daughter just had a baby. I had to drive all the way back here today. This is the fourth time we're sitting in front of you because I keep getting denied and we have to come back and we have to come back. They're trying to wear us out, and I don't think it's fair. We asked for your vote. We don't want this humongous project. Mr. De Jure compares this development to the plaza all the time, to the Regions Bank. But right next to it is the Subi building, 70 feet. Right behind, there's another building, 80 feet. Why should he be allowed to build a 149-feet building? It is really crazy that we have a code, and I would assume that you're here to enforce it. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Ponder.
I just need to ask the same question. If you want to make it a standard question, I just want to make sure.
I think because I don't want to continue back and forth, even though but I think I would prefer if we kept it towards the end. Just write it down, have your system write it down, and then you could address each of them. And I will ask that you don't, if you have a question, you don't ask, because that's just, it is the same.
If it's the same question, then I think it's.
Well,
better to wait.
I think at the end, if he wants, you certainly have your assistant take notes. I don't think it's prejudicial for the attorney to take notes on what people have said and then ask his questions at the end. And I don't think the questions should be argumentative. I understand the point you're making, but I would say ask your questions at the end if that's what the board wants to do, and just keep track of it. And if it's the same question for every person, that shouldn't be a problem.
If that's the board's decision,
Let's
again,
go ahead and
mine
proceed
would be
that
to
way.
do it individually so that we have a fresher record, but I can't do anything
I
else.
would prefer after the first speaker, I want you to do it at the end. Thank you. Next speaker, Jill.
Yes, you're next. And he spoke previously. Jordan Sokolov will be the following speaker. So if you could prepare, please.
What do you say, Gordon?
Good evening.
Hi, good evening, board members. My name is Arjun Hondet, 3100 Galliano Court. I spoke last time. It's basically the same issue. We're not against development. We just want it to stay within the codes, within the rules, regulations. I mean, if I come here and I say, hey, listen, I want to make my house a 4-story house, they start laughing at me. They're like, what are you talking about? Just go away. So we just, ask from you and from the commissioners as well later on, just to follow the rules, that's it. Then another thing I wanted to touch on, that was last time, I don't remember who had the question, and somebody said, why aren't the people from Malaga here? Because they are so impacted by the plaza. Why aren't they complaining or whatever? There's three reasons for it. The first reason is the neighbors don't like each other. That's it. So there's no really, they don't talk to each other. And the second one is there's no community feel over there. Where we live, we have community feel. We talk to each other. We talk about this project. We know how it's going to impact us. The third thing, and the most important thing, is people are just put off by what's happening. I talk to a lot of people when I walk my dogs in the morning and say, hey, do you come to the meeting, on Wednesday night? And they're like, why would I? Nobody listens to us anymore. Look what we have in our backyard. Nobody listens to us. So why would we come here, waste our time in July during vacation, and just be ignored? So that's really a big issue, I think, that's going on right now. There's really a disconnect between what's happening here and what's happening outside with the residents. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Sokolov spoke previously via Zoom at the last meeting.
Joe, have the next speaker ready, please.
Hi, greetings.
Excuse me.
Hold on.
Yep. I spoke on Zoom last time, so I get to speak 6 minutes this time because the Zoom connection was bad. Nice to see you all. I'm going to review pretty much what I said last time, which was just over a year ago during the pandemic, this board and the city commission.
Can you please state your name and address for the record?
Sorry,
Thank you, Claudia.
I forgot. Gordon Sokoloff, 225 Alessio Avenue. During the pandemic, this board was presented the Plater-Zyberg study, which you had to approve, which was a zoning code rewrite. It took many, many hours and a lot of citizen involvement, which the citizens had to fight for. And then it went in front of the city commission. That study cost the city over $250,000 to arrive at a set of zoning codes that now, once again, as the previous speakers have indicated, they're looking for a variance or to go beyond what is allowed. When a citizen has to show, wants to go for a variance for a residential property, they have to show a hardship. When it's a developer, that hardship is customarily, they're not making enough money. Like Maria Cruz stated, when you build something, if you are a developer, developers tend to seem to throw spaghetti at the wall. I'm going to design something twice as big and see if the city buys it. That's why the city of Coral Gables is losing its way. That's why people are starting to say, I don't recognize that city anymore. Because boards like this, now it's incumbent upon you to hold the line, to enforce the codes as they were written, as you approved, as you studied the Plater-Zyberg zoning rewrite. That's your job. It's not to let every developer, exceed what's allowed. And one other thing I'd like to mention is that just about everyone who was at the last meeting who spoke in favor of this project did not have stake in the game. Those people were friends. I knew some of them, of Alan Morris, and they were employees of Alan Morris, and there were other people that were not residing in the area. People that are speaking in favor of this project are people who live there, who'd go to work there, who walk there, who raise their families there, and who are speaking with passion because this is their neighborhood. And the person who said last time, NIMBY, not in my backyard, no one is saying no to Mr. Alan Morris. They're just saying no to a project that's twice as big as what he's allowed. So we're asking you to just vote for what he's entitled to build and nothing more than that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Aurelio Durana. Mr. Duran spoke previously. Following him will be Jacob Asensi.
Aurelio Durana, 322 Alessio Avenue, where I have lived in an old Spanish house for over 30 years. I raised my children there. My children and my grandchildren live in Coral Gables now. I am opposed to this project. Before I address it on a substantive basis, procedurally, I object to being limited to 1 minute. It's irrational. Secondly, when I tried to access the building this afternoon, the doors were locked. We're talking about the courtyard doors that everybody knows is the access point for the building. We had to bang on the doors for 5 minutes before the guard finally came and unlocked the doors. That right there is a violation of the Sunshine Law. Your attorney can tell you, you can call Miriam Ramos.
Solerio, you told me that already. Please, I haven't, by the way, I've not stopped anybody at 1 minute. Everybody has spoken. I've given more than the 3 minutes. You're going to have your share of time, but let's get to the reason you're here.
Right,
Please.
but that does inhibit the speakers when you tell them that they're limited to 1 minute.
But you already had the chance before. I am not limited to anybody. So if you please tell your comments and move forward.
Another procedural question, can we cross-examine the city staff? Can any one of us cross-examine the city staff? Any witnesses that Mr. De Jure produces? Mr. Morris's mother-in-law, if she testifies today again?
The objectors have a right of cross-examination. I caution both sides that cross-examination is not designed to intimidate witnesses. You can make your cross, be civil with your cross-examination, and you can choose at the end of the process, if somebody from the public wishes to cross-examine a particular witness, we can allow that as well.
Thank you.
All right, I'll save my questions for the end, depending on what Mr. De Jure asked the members of the public, and I may want to cross-examine others as well.
I will follow our attorney's advice, and we will proceed in that fashion.
Thank you, sir. In essence, basically what this egomaniacal developer, because there's no other way of describing Ali Morris, is proposing here is spot zoning. He already got away with the city commission extending the transfer of development rights from a zone where they were not targeted to. This was specifically expanded to this particular parcel. Don't allow spot zoning. I thought we were past that stage in Miami-Dade County. That is what Mr. Morris wants. I'm happy Mr. De Jure took off the mask and basically said that this project boils down to Ali Morris's ego. He wants his building to be no less tall than the Plaza buildings, than any other building that is 14 or 15 stories tall. That is.
Jill, can you please stop the?
It's been stopped.
Thank you.
That is the bottom line of this project. He's got enough money. He's a multimillionaire. I don't think he's even motivated by money. This is a man who just self-published a self-aggrandizing book that wants everybody to read it to become like him. Don't vote for this project, please. Let us live in peace. Thank you.
Thank you.
Jacob Asensi.
Hi. Good afternoon, members of the board. Thank you for being here. My name is Jacobo Asensi from 328 Alicio Avenue. And like many other neighbors here, I've been living there for 16 years. And again, I oppose the project, and I want the developer to be held accountable for what he is entitled to. One of my questions that perhaps he will be able to answer later is why, my understanding is 140, 150 units. My concern is about parking and about the traffic patterns that are around that area. Salcedo, for example, if we allow Salcedo has been closed as it's only in one direction, coming from south to north from University. My concern is that eventually a development of this size might be converted later on into a hotel, for example, which definitely would change the configuration of the area. The more people and concentration that we have, the higher the crime and the higher the problems that we had seen. I had seen it firsthand for all the developments that had happened in the corner of Lejeune and Burr Road. There have been several residential buildings, and parking as it is a problem for us in that area. For that reason, I want you to consider seriously holding the project or the upgrade, as they call it, and just let it build what he's entitled to build. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next
David
speaker.
Fournier, he spoke previously, and then Francis Fournier.
Just how many speakers we have tonight?
About 21 in person and 2 so far via Zoom.
David Fournier, 128 San Sebastian. I am opposed of this project. It's way too big. We have nothing against Mr. Morris. There is a code. The code said to build with the surface is 77 feet. That's it. No more. Just 77 feet. Two things. I am going to give you an example. If today I decided to build a house on a 10,000 square feet lot, huge house, and at the last moment I said, oh, I forgot to build a pool. It's okay. You know what? I'm going to take a piece of the sidewalk from the city, and I'm going to build a pool. This example is exactly the same thing that what Morris is doing to us. It means that he's supposed to build 77, and then he decides, you know what? Because I want, because I can, let me double. That's not the way it is. Second thing, I am outraged about the attitude of the lawyer. He's manipulating the city. Every time he goes, the first meeting and the second meeting also, every time when the city staff comes, he goes straight over there to talk to her, to manage her. Then, now, what he's doing, he wants to scare us. I am sorry, but there is no place right now for that. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
After Francis Fournier will be Teresita Carmona.
Good evening, board members. My name is Francis Fournier, and I live at 128 San Sebastian Avenue. When we decided to raise our family in Coral Gables, livelihood was not negotiable. It was simply a must. During the past few years, we see our livelihood being threatened as we fell into this constant fight trying to defend the tranquility of our community from the overdevelopment. We want to preserve the treasure that we have, and this is the reason why we are all here now. The plaza is a lost case, and we are reminded about it every single day when we open our front door and we find that massive fort just steps away from our neighbor's backyard. We live the consequences every single day: traffic, speed, reckless driving, illegal parking, just to mention a few of the highlights of our new normal lifestyle, which is not pleasant, needless to say. We have over 15 children in our street, and as a concerned mother of an 8-year-old girl, little young citizen sitting down right there, I am reaching out to you for help, please. I feel I'm not asking for much. As our neighborhoods have repeatedly said, and we appreciate that you listen to us, we are not against development. We just ask the developers to work according to the code that makes the city livable for everyone. Please help us preserve our community, help us reinforce that code, and make the city fairly livable for all of us. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. After Ms. Carmona will be Olivia Cancio.
Good evening, board members. My name is Teresita Carmona. I live on 117 San Sebastian Avenue. I am here today to ask you to please go by the code and follow the guidelines for that property, for that land. 17 years ago, we moved to Coral Gables and from West Kendall, and we escaped the traffic and the congestion. We saw that neighborhood ruined because of the development was so much. I ask you to consider and not not do this to our neighborhood that is so peaceful. Even though we're so close to the city, we are a very peaceful neighborhood. And please don't ruin our neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you. Doesn't matter.
Hello, I'm a little short. I'm Olivia Cancio. I live on 315 Cadima Avenue in the Crafts District. I'll keep it brief. Newer resident of the Crafts area. My family has lived in Coral Gables over 20 years. I went to Gables High. I was raised in Miami. My husband, our son, and I moved from New York a couple years ago. We specifically chose to buy in the Crafts because actually when Merrick planned the city, it was part of that original plan. So it's been around a very long time. Our house is from 1927. The neighborhood is beautiful, idyllic, full of children, families that have lived there for years, decades. Despite, as Ms. Carmona said, we're so close to downtown. So you get that proximity, but you also get what Coral Gables is about in this neighborhood. By building a building, of course, Plaza Las Cause, got it, we bought when that was already done. But by building another building so close to the residential neighborhood, even bigger than it should be built just because you can, it sort of disrupts that feeling and the reason why people come and buy and invest in Coral Gables. So I just want to express that and that I'm deeply opposed to this project. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Sue?
Good evening. I'm Sue Kavalersky. I live at 6830 Gratian Street. And tonight I'm here representing the Coral Gables Neighbors Association, of which Ponce Neighbors are part of. The CGNA is absolutely for the Ponce Neighbors Association. And therefore, we are totally against the height of this project as it is proposed. This is very reminiscent of the Paseo de la Riviera, which Chip knows very well about, where it was zoned low-rise also at 45 feet, ended up jumping past mid-rise and right to high-rise. The commission today, if you ask the commission today, would they have voted for the Paseo de la Riviera as it was built? They would have said no. This is another one of those situations where this board, if you approve this and it goes to commission, this board will regret the decision because of the impact on the neighborhood. Therefore, the CGNA is totally opposed to this height. And I have to address Mr. Diuri on a couple of points that he made. First of all, he kept citing a number of court cases. That sounds kind of threatening to me. And when the particular court case, when he said, there is a case that says that residents have no right to light. No right to light. Think about that. So he's saying basically, the heck with the residents, to heck with Coral Gables, to heck with quality of life. Well, I'm sorry, but the neighbors that are here today moved here for quality of life. We are not going to give that up, regardless of the threats being posed by this developer. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Olga Cancio? Following will be Maria Longo.
Good evening. My name is Olga Cancio. I live at 1250 Burr Road. And I just want to say that please, I oppose this project totally. And please help us keep the city beautiful the way it was meant to be when George Merrick designed it and built it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, good evening. My name is Maria Cristina Longo, and I live at 16 Phoenicia Avenue, and I own a property on San Sebastian, which is a couple of blocks south of this proposed project. I want to thank you for your service and for the opportunity to speak here today. I'm against the proposed land use change because the proposed land use for this project is not compatible in height to the single-family residential neighborhood that is just south of it. Additionally, this project was granted the benefits of Level 1 and Level 2 Med bonus without having Mediterranean-style design. It is obvious even for the untrained eye that this project is not a Mediterranean style. This project is a version of a 1970s modern architecture, and the developer is benefiting from the Med bonus by getting additional FAR, or density. We don't have to do a traffic study to figure out that any additional tall high-rises in this neighborhood, like the one being proposed, will be a huge mistake. I understand that it is not this board's responsibility to enforce the Mediterranean bonus requirements, and that is the responsibility of the Board of Architects to do so. In this case, the Board of Architects made a mistake by granting Med bonus when it was not merited. However, the buck starts with the developer, and in this case, Mr. Alan Morris knows very well the difference between authentic Mediterranean architecture and what is not, because he already developed a great and beautiful example of what it should be with the Alhambra Tower in Coral Gables. The Planning and Zoning Board's responsibility, your responsibility, is to be big picture oriented and forward looking. In my opinion, looking at the past, it's because a big building was built and it changed zoning several times. The Agave Plaza changed zoning throughout the years several times, and the end result, even though the architecture of the property right in front of the park is traditional and very well done, the parking garage and the apartment buildings, I think the volume is too big for just right next to the sidewalk. It's not the right volume. So just because something was done wrong, two wrongs don't make one right. I urge you today to please deny the land use change. And I urge the developer's team, Mr. Alan Morris' team, to be more respectful of us, to be more respectful of the
There's a
Mediterranean
phone. Can you
Code.
please turn that phone off, whoever?
I urge the developer and the team to be more respectful of us,
Ms. Maria, can you address us,
to be
please?
respectful of the Mediterranean Code, to be more respectful of the neighborhood and its needs. And please, I urge you to please build a smaller luxury condo building, similar in character and size to the one being proposed by Mr. Bermelio at 719 Biltmore Way. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
so much.
Grant Cham, resident of 301 Vizcaya.
Good evening. Can you see me?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you for your service. I have been a resident of
Can you
Coral-
state your name and address, please?
I'm sorry, Twyla Grandchamp. I live at 301 Vizcaya Avenue.
Thank you.
I have been living in Coral Gables since 1974. I came here because of the beauty of the landscape, the people, the gardens, the flowers, the birds, the butterflies. I am very much opposed to this. I do not look forward to going up Ponce de Leon and walking through a canyon of buildings. This is, like people have said, this is not Brickell West. This is Coral Gables. And maybe you'll have to change your motto, the city beautiful, to the Brickell West at some point in the future. I know what it's like to sit on a board and listen to people bring their complaints and ask for decisions. I sat on the Dade County Mental Health Board for years. And one of the things that I tried to do was to keep an open mind when I listened to people, to not have a preconceived decision, but to listen and to understand that what people are telling me is the truth and important because we are citizens. This is our city. This is our city beautiful. We want to keep it that way. Thank you.
David Winker, he spoke previously.
Good evening. David Winker, 4720 South Lejeune Road. I represent the Ponce neighbors and want to thank you guys for being here. I represent a group of people who live within 500 feet of this project. They're here today testifying. The competent, substantial evidence before you makes clear that the upzoning requested by this developer should be denied. Residents that are uniquely affected because they live within 500 feet have made clear that the density, the traffic, and the other impacts on their neighborhood for the fourth time, they're bringing that forth to tell you. For the fourth time, they're here asking you, begging you to please deny this. I think that it's a situation where the developer is setting this up as you have no choice. They put the evidence on there that they need this upzoning, they deserve this upzoning, and you do not have the power to deny them what they want. You do have the power, of course, and we ask that you do again what you have consistently done, which is take into account what these residents have to say. Deny this project. Mr. Morris can build a very great project there with the current zoning. He does not need this upzoning. Please vote no.
Thank you. I have a question from council.
He represents, he's not council.
I'm sorry. Do we have a list of people that you are representing and how many?
I can provide that if you'd like that, I could definitely do that. And I can
I'm
give
trying to keep
addresses.
track of the neighbors that are here and where do they live in relationship to the property. So if you can provide that
For sure, I'll do that for you.
during this session, I would appreciate
Yep, you got it. I'll give you the breakdown of that. I think that'd be very helpful because I think you'll find that everyone that's affected by this, the people that live in that neighborhood, it's unanimous, and I think that'll be a good exercise also because they're not here. Like we all had plans. This meeting was canceled. I'm here. Should we do something else? We were all traveling. We were all going out of town. So I'll do that.
How many more
Thank
or
you.
less are you representing?
Excuse me, Senator Revuelta, can you speak into the microphone?
My apologies. How many more or less are you representing?
I would say 20, 25. More than that, so 154. So yeah, it's definitely, I guess if you look at the household, so 154 people.
Within 500 feet?
We have one court reporter and we can only have one voice speaking at a time. And I know everybody means well here, but if you need to come up and speak on this, then please do so and come to the microphone because we want to get this down as a record. That's what she's doing today.
Again, just to make sure, it's within 500 feet,
Yes.
you're representing about 150 people.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Sara Conde. And following Ms. Conde that spoke previously, Susan Haynes.
I'm Sarah Condi. I'm from 228 Alessio Avenue. I know that you want to do what's best for Coral Gables, and I assume you have a duty of care to do what's best for Coral Gables. Coral Gables is the residents. We're here. And what's best for us is for you to keep the zoning as it is and to preserve our neighborhood. Now, I know that some people are saying, well, who's within so many feet of that building? You know, more people than within a small area are affected. They'll be affected by the traffic, they'll be affected by the density. I would imagine that we would want to have sort of a gradation down of the buildings to the residents. I know that Mr. DeUri is talking about large buildings being within the vicinity of the building that he's proposing. Well, you know, some of them are north of that. They're not next to the houses. The plaza, we know the opinion on that. The hospital is next to, it's next to 37th. That's not in the center of Coral Gables in the same way that this building is. This building abuts residential. So I would like you to turn down his request to double the size of the building. Thank you.
Thank you.
Susan Haynes?
5-foot lots or 50-foot lots?
Susan Hayes, 243 Fluvia Avenue. I'm here to oppose the going from medium to high density. That is the duty of the board. The Planning and Zoning Board is to keep people from trying to build things that aren't in the code. I don't understand. I know when we wanted to get a new roof about 5 years ago, we wanted to get a metal roof. They said, no, you can't. It's not in the code. And I said, but that's the strongest roof for a hurricane. They said, that's too bad. You have to stay within the code. So if we as residents are required to stay within the code, I think the people who are building the commercial buildings should also be required to stay within the code. Thank you.
Thank you.
Alan?
I'm Alan Gummerson. I live at 228 Alacio Avenue. I have for 27 years. I'm opposed to approving this project. I'm also concerned about democracy. It may seem like a weird thing to say here, but you volunteers you're not exactly a New England town hall meeting, but you're close. This is a place where citizens can come and express their doubts and concerns, et cetera. And I think it's very important that this kind of thing continue on. I'm concerned about the continued existence of democracy in this country, for example, for lots of reasons. I don't know how many of you got to see the testimony in front of Congress yesterday, for example. But I'm also concerned about what I hear from my fellow residents of Coral Gables. They're very cynical. The people who turned out here today and who are on the Zoom meeting still believe that they can have an influence on decisions in this country. And they're concerned about this, right? There are an awful lot of people out there. You know, we can walk out this door and within 6 or 7 blocks, we can probably find 10 or 12 or 15 or 20 people who say, go to a meeting? Are you crazy? Those guys aren't going to listen to us, right? The guy wants to double the height of a building over how it's coded currently, a code that was only recently passed. That board is there to make sure that whoever shows up with the biggest wad of dollars is going to get what he wants, right? You have an opportunity to stand up for democracy, to make sure that the rules that you guys help set are followed, regardless of how big that wad of cash is. And I think if you overturn the decisions that you've made so far, last meeting, this is the 4th bite of the apple, as I understand it. You overturn that decision, right? You're just going to increase the cynicism. And I fear what's going to happen to this country if these kinds of things continue. I don't know if you were like me when you were in college. Maybe you had a radical professor who signed a book called Who Rules America? There's a chapter in that book that said every local community is run by the developers without exception. All right? You have a chance to prove that book wrong. I hope you do it. I look forward to cross-examination.
Maria Yanes?
Good afternoon. My name is Maria Julia Yanes. I live in 255 San Sebastian Avenue. When I bought my house in 1996, I didn't have money to splurge in coming to Coral Gables. I came to Coral Gables looking for rules and regulations and a place where those rules and regulations are followed. So I've been living in that house for 27 years. The same way that we residents, we need to stick to the codes of the city, and we need to, anything that we do in our houses, we need to do it according to the rules and regulations, which I appreciate. I think that those should be followed for businesses and developers. Just, I am not against the project completely. Just do it in a way that is, following the rules and regulations that are present. Thank you.
Gilbert Castillo.
Good evening, Board. And I didn't know I signed up to speak, but I'll take this opportunity to do so. Thank you so much for your service. I live on 226 San Sebastian Avenue. I've been a volunteer for baseball, soccer, and the youth center for many years. My kids
Did you
grew up
state your
here.
name for the record? Did
What's
you
that?
give us your name for the record?
Yes, Gilbert Castillo.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Having said that, my kids grew up here. They were able to ride the bikes on the street, no problem whatsoever. Fortunately, they're all grown up now and no bike riding. It's scary out there, the way the traffic is today. Just in the plaza, not even finished. It's not even officially open. And there's so much traffic in that ponds. I don't know, some residents here from San Sebastian witness, but San Sebastian is like a speedway to cut across from Lejeune to Ponds, sorry. My kids would not be allowed to ride their bikes anymore. And I asked the board to decline this. We don't need more buildings like this. Yes, we've made mistakes before, but we should not continue these mistakes moving forward. I have grandkids now, 2 of them, and they come to visit quite often on Sundays. And fortunately, they're not age to ride their bikes, but they're probably not will probably not be allowed to ride their bikes if this continues. So I ask the board to please reconsider this and decline this project. Thank you.
C. Vidal.
Good afternoon. My name is Christina Vidal. I live at 301 Alessio, and I'm wearing my mask because we are still in a pandemic. And as you might know, the transmissibility of the current variant is very, very high. I'm a physician. I'm just letting you know we should all be masking right now. But at any rate, getting to the topic, we have been involved in commenting, in listening, in considering, in examining this proposal for more than a year now. And as you've heard, essentially the residents are unanimously opposed to this variance that's being requested. There really is no basis for it technically. Technically, you are beholden to enforce a code that has been approved, and we are here to request that you simply fulfill your duty in representing us, because that is really your duty, is to represent the residents. And it's a fiduciary responsibility that you have to do so. You have to carry out the best wishes and the best interests of the community. But also from a technical standpoint, the city plan is historically protected, and the city plan includes sightlines and airspace. It isn't only about roads and concrete. I know this because I lived in New York City for many years. So sightlines and the interruption of sightlines and airspace around buildings is something very critical. So as you drive up in a modified University Avenue, you will not see the massive monstrosity that is today the plaza. You will see a concrete wall. So the intention of the sightlines driving up University toward Ponce will be interrupted. And it's a protected asset of the city, the master plan. It's actually historically protected and designated. In addition to that, the San Sebastian Apartments recently received historic designation. That's a beautiful building. It sets the tone. It's the landmark of the area. It's a Phineas Paste. My grandfather was an architect, I am deeply, deeply moved that we have the treasures that we have in our city. Phineas Paste should be a national treasure. We have not, our city has so much to offer. We have not written the books, the coffee table books that should exist to showcase Denman Fink, to showcase Phineas Pace. They were historic. They were scholars, and the work that they did is amazing. San Sebastian sets the tone for that area. You put up a 15-floor or 17-floor canyon next to that, you are destroying the treasure that we have, and we have it, so why do that? I just don't understand it. Frankly, I'm not even going to request that you enforce the 7 feet, or 7 floors, 70 feet. I actually had a personal conversation face-to-face with Mr. Morris. He's very nice. He's a gentleman. And I asked him if he could do what he did for Brickell. So in Brickell, I was told by an attorney who explained to me what happened there, he actually donated land so that it could be turned into a park. There's been some sort of controversy, and I'm not familiar with all the details, but he did that for the city of Miami. He did it for Brickell. So if he was able to do it for Brickell, why can't he do it for his own city? So that's actually what I think would be the ultimate resolution to this dilemma. He could end up being a hero instead of a villain and give us a park. And he's done it before. So that's really my request. I know it's untenable and he's not going to consider it, but he's done it before. There's a precedent. I think it'd be a beautiful solution. But anyway, that's all. Thank you so much for your time. You guys work very hard. Thank you.
Thank you. Madam, what is your address?
Oh, 301 Alessio.
Alessio.
We have no more speakers in person. The rest will be via Zoom. I'm going to,
I think at this time, what I will allow is the applicant's counsel to be able to ask your questions and to the speakers here before we move to the Zoom platform.
I mean, these are just going to be very limited questions. I'm not here to intimidate anybody by any stretch of the imagination. I'm just trying to, as many people have requested, to follow the code, just like they've said. So it's going to be a little difficult, but I guess I would just call up whoever lives the closest to the property. I believe you're Santander.
And what I will ask both of the applicant and the public, let's keep it
I'm going to try to call
friendly.
one person, yeah.
Okay?
If the residents could cooperate, who is the person that lives the closest to the project? Who's the person that lives the closest in the room?
That is here tonight. Do you have an address that we could
There
call
were
upon?
so many addresses, it was impossible for me.
This cross-examination is to the people that have spoken, not to people that haven't spoken, because he's only crossing those people that have spoken. So he's not specifically asking for an individual, he's asking for anybody who's spoken who believes that they may live the closest. They may not know if they live the closest.
Santander Avenue.
Okay.
There's 3 from Santander Avenue, and 1 is a property owner. That's my log.
And let's keep the comments through us, because otherwise the court reporter cannot take them, please.
Mr. Chair, I just want to say that I clearly remember that no one else came up after in the last meeting to answer any questions or to be cross-examined. I don't remember ever having anybody to go through this, what address. We never did this in the last meeting, and I just want to say I'm pretty sure that if we go back to the minutes, we'll see that I think it was Chair Azizdat said that we weren't going to do this. I just want to say that I don't remember anyone that spoke last time to be brought up. So this is something that we're doing new, maybe to create a record, but it's not something that we did last time. And I think the chair said that we weren't going to do it.
You're right. In the time that I've been here, we never done it, but we want to establish for the record that is and this is Mr. Kohler.
The special exemption.
Well, no, it's quasi-judicial, and he has a right, unfortunately, to
I understand. No, I understand that. I'm just saying.
And the last time, what I can say for the last time is I agree with you. There were no questions asked at the last hearing. It was requested that he do it at the end, and he chose not to. We're having this hearing. He has the right of cross-examination, and since he's requested for cross-examination, we have to give him that opportunity.
Right, had this meeting not taken place all over again, he would not have had that opportunity. So now with this meeting, we are giving the applicant the opportunity to do what he chose not to do the last time. Just want to put that on the record.
That is absolutely 100% correct.
Thank
And you also said that the citizens have the right to also cross-examine.
Yes, I did. And if they want to cross-examine any of the witnesses of the applicant, in this case, the only person that I've heard tonight is the attorney. If they want to cross-examine the attorney, then they can cross-examine the attorney. But
And what we'll do is, after the applicant, we would open it up, let the public question the applicant.
how many Zoom applicants, how many Zoom speakers do we have?
7.
This is getting crazy.
Well, my suggestion, Mr. Chair, is let's just get done with the Zoom people, and then he can ask his question.
All right, I will follow your advice, Mr. Attorney.
I'm
Which we did
definitely not
last
trying to
time.
open up a can of worms here. I'm just trying to ask a couple of questions. I apologize.
We are
Jill,
not
can you
denying
call-
that right, so.
Has those people, we're going to swear them in because I don't believe.
Yes, what we're going to do is each individual one will appear. If they need to show themselves on the Zoom video, and the court reporter will swear them in, and we'll take each one.
Helen Montero, Stephen Ware, Maria Garcia, Gustavo Salamanca, John Casamano, Oliver Curtin, Alicia Tejeda.
Do we see them, or how we're going to be able to swear them in?
I think we're going to have to call each one of them because we're not going to be able to see all the screens.
We should do it individually.
Yeah.
Okay, let's do it one at a time then.
Helen Montero,
Yes.
Please,
What in the heck was that?
we have people that are joining the meeting that shouldn't be joining, so we're trying to control it as best as we can. Sorry about that.
Okay.
Hello?
Helen, can you please open your camera, please?
Sure.
If you wish to be sworn in.
okay.
Oh,
Raise your right hand, please. Do you swear or affirm that anything you will testify to will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Thank you.
Please state your name and address, please.
Helen Montero, 220 Sarto Avenue, Coral Gables. I just want to say I want to keep it short and sweet and to the point. I am opposed to this project. I've been here 25 years and I don't want this project to go on. So please vote no. That's all I'm going to say.
Thank you. I like that, short and sweet.
Thank you. Stephen Ware, please.
Hi, good evening.
Please state your name and address.
Stephen Weir, 244 Fluvia Avenue.
Raise your right hand, please, sir. Do you swear or affirm that everything you will testify to will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do indeed.
Thank you.
Go ahead, please.
Indeed. Good evening. Lord, thank you very much for your time and your service to Coral Gables. I'd just like to say I do oppose the rezoning of this project. My family and I enjoy a lifestyle here in Coral Gables. We specifically moved to Coral Gables for this lifestyle. We believe the overpopulation and height of this building would bring is beyond what this city needs. We've already extended and grown the city as much as possible, and we don't need to go any further. It's at a great size. I think just the overpopulation is too much. I, as a person, as a citizen of Coral Gables, stand by the regulations set by the Coral Gables building code. I myself would love to do many, many things, glorious things to my property, but I can't. I've asked. I understand that I can't do that. I don't understand why such a large organization feels that they can just push the barriers and keep pushing every single time. Fourth time here now. I find it quite ridiculous. And that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
I'm sorry, Gustavo Salamanca? I guess he got disconnected.
Mr. Salamanca, can you hear us?
He's not appearing on the
Next
list.
speaker then.
John?
Yes, I'm here.
Can you state your name and address for the record, please?
Yes. My name is John Cosimano. It's actually spelled Cosomano. I reside at 330 Candia Avenue. I have been a resident of Miami.
Wait.
Sorry, sir,
Excuse me 1 second.
Will you raise your right hand, please? Raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm that everything you will testify to will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
Go ahead, please.
Okay, I've been a resident of Miami for 20 years, the last 4 years here in Coral Gables. I'm against the proposed change. I'm asking you not to approve it. I'm not against development, but I'm against overdevelopment, and I'm against the growing density here. My street here on Candia Avenue in the last 4 years, I've experienced tremendous growth in traffic. So it's getting late. I don't want to keep everyone. I think everything that Mrs. Cruz opened with is exactly my feelings. I thank you for your service and I thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Speaker 6, Oliver, cannot open his camera.
Okay, so we are going to allow him to speak. His testimony may not be considered substantial competent evidence, but he's welcome to speak on the item.
Go ahead. Let's let him speak then. Sir, can you hear us?
He's been disconnected.
Okay. Go to the next speaker.
Alyssa Tejeda?
Hi, good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, so
Before you do, raise your right hand, please.
Right here.
Do you swear or affirm that everything you will testify to will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
And give us your name and address for the record, please.
Yes, so my name is Alisa Tejera, and I live at 325 Alessio Avenue. And I want to take this opportunity to thank you first and foremost for allowing us to share our opinions, and to all those who are there present. I've lived in Coral Gables for 10 years, and never once did I expect that I was going to be speaking up in this type of forum. I want to voice my opinion and it be placed on record that I do oppose this project and the overdevelopment of our city. As many other residents have previously stated, we are held to a certain standard. We have to follow rules. We have to follow rules when we're doing our roofs, our windows, when we're painting. And I have code enforcement in front of my house on a regular basis. So I would appreciate if the same standards would be upheld for the developers. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Jill, any more on the Zoom platform?
No more speakers.
Do we have any speaker on the phone platform?
We do have speakers that want to be, would like to ask questions in person.
Okay, so there's no one on the phone to
No.
speak? Okay. Mr. Collier, do we, at this point, I guess the speakers that we're gonna ask question is gonna be, should we wait for the rebuttal of the public?
Well, I think the way we should handle this is, since we've completed the testimony, we're going to give the opportunity of the attorney who has requested a cross-examination, to do a cross-examination, and then we will see what persons in the audience seek to, since the only I assume they're not going to cross-examine the objectors, so I presume that they're cross-examining the attorney. If they want to cross-examine the attorney, then we will permit them to do that. But we'll take it one at a time.
Okay.
So why don't we have the attorney, since he wants to do the cross-examination, let him do the cross-examination now if he chooses to do so.
I didn't hear any evidence of fact that would establish competent substantial evidence. I'm not going to cross-examine anybody. Everybody seems pretty adamant that they don't want to do that. And I really didn't have a need for it. I really just wanted to establish the fact that was already established in the testimony, which is we're here for height. And I can just do my rebuttal in my close unless someone wants to cross-examine me, but let me know how you want to go.
I am going to let the public speak, and I'm going to close the public hearing. So this is your opportunity, right, to do so.
If he doesn't wish to cross-examine, which he said he doesn't, if a member of the public feels that they need to cross-examine the attorney, then, and has requested that, then this is their opportunity. Okay. And then after that, then the applicant has a right of a short rebuttal.
Okay. In the same fashion that we gave the applicant the opportunity to question any member of the public, I will give the public the opportunity to question the applicant. So how do we proceed, Ms.?
Well, I think we have to see if there's anybody that has the interest in cross-examining the attorney.
The attorney. So I see Mrs. Cruz was hand up.
Mrs. Cruz wants to cross-examine the attorney. Why don't we get a list of names now that are seeking to cross-examine the attorney?
Is there anyone else? Anyone else?
Okay, if you could please come
Okay,
over.
we have one person then who wishes to, two people?
Yeah, so
Three
it's
people.
individual
Three
versus-
people, okay, so why don't we have Ms. Cruz, I'll just advise Ms. Cruz, like I would have advised the attorney, this is an opportunity to seek answers to questions. It's not an opportunity to berate any witness, as I wouldn't expect the attorney to do that. And I ask that all the people that are going to cross be civil in their cross-examination.
Thank you for that.
Can I ask that we keep this to a relatively short amount of time and not make this extended?
We will do. We will give them sufficient time like we gave everybody, so like there's no.
Maria Cruz, 1447 Miller Road. I'm not an attorney. I'm a retired educator. And I usually like to ask my students questions. So since I was asked several questions that I found interesting, I would like Mr. DeJure, please, to tell me if there's anyone in the Morris team that lives in this neighborhood or close to this neighborhood. They can raise their hands. Oh,
Let him answer the question.
okay.
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Does that mean that they live in Coral Gables? How many live in Coral Gables?
I don't know the answer to that question.
No, you said, yes, there's somebody who lives near or here. I want to know how many are there.
At least one.
At least one. Okay. Following that train of thought, okay, can you tell me, not specific address, but does Mr. Morris live anywhere close to this project?
Mr. Morris lives in Coral Gables.
That's not, that
Granada.
doesn't answer my question.
He lives on Granada in Coral Gables.
Okay, my question is, does he live near this project?
lives-
Yes or no? It's a yes or no? He asked questions similar to that.
I believe the question's been answered. Did you give him the street?
He gave him a street. I mean,
I don't know where the street is. I just want to know, is it near this project? Yes or no?
He has answered, he lives in the Gables and he even volunteered for the answer of Granada. I don't want for him to divulge the
No, I
exact
don't need the address. I just want to say near or not. That's all.
He lives outside,
Is it yes
he
or
lives
no?
outside the notice area of 1,000 feet.
Okay, all right. And since you work very closely with the staff, maybe I would like to know where anybody in the staff, especially the person that's here from, I think there's only one staff member here, does he or she live near this project?
I don't know the answer to that question.
Well, she can answer.
I don't think that's the staff, Mr. Collier, that's
Well,
relevant to this.
I don't think it's relevant to, she's not testifying,
Yeah.
she's testifying as the staff person. I don't think that's out of order.
Ms. Cruz, I will not ask for that question to be answered by staff. Let's concentrate on the applicant only.
Okay, let's continue then with, do you have anyone on the Morris team that is a lobbyist?
I am registered as a lobbyist.
Excuse me?
I am registered as a lobbyist.
Okay, are you the only one that's a lobbyist?
There are several members of the team that are registered as lobbyists.
Okay, and they have properly registered, right?
They're all registered with the city of Coral Gables, and you can
Okay.
check the public record.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms.
Thank you.
Oscar Sosa?
Mr. Do I have to say my name again?
Yes, please.
Oscar Sosa, 116 San Sebastian Avenue.
Thank you.
Mr. Ure,
Yes, sir.
what is the code in the build where you want to build right now?
We're here on
Right.
we're here on a land use item. It's, well, right now it's low commercial.
Which is, how many feet?
It depends if you have med bonus or not, but with the med bonus, it's 77 feet.
It's 45 and 77 feet. And you're asking for,
We're asking for high commercial,
which is over
which is
149?
190 feet 6 inches, but we're requesting 149.
Okay. Scale, right? Scalability, I believe, is the word that the code uses because you refer to 2850 Ponce de Leon, which is the Regions Bank, right?
That's one of the buildings.
Right. And what should happen from that building going to the residence area,
According to staff,
according to the code?
That's an interesting question, because we're all here to follow the code, and the code has a process, and I was going to talk about this. And staff reviews the code, and based on that code, staff provides a recommendation. So according to staff and how the code works and how the law works, it's a recommendation for 149 feet, which is what it should be, according to the city's professional staff. Not my opinion. We tried to go for a taller building that matched the plaza projects and the regions and everybody else.
What happened to scalability? It goes down the drain? Because right next to this building is the Subi building, which is 77 feet. So we're expecting something to be either 77 or lower to go down to the residences. So you're saying, let's go from 2850, which is 150, 200 feet, which is crazy, crazy high, go down to 77 and go up to 149. That's what you're proposing, right?
We're proposing 149 on our site, and pursuant to staff regulation, which is pursuant to the code, recommended. That's what we're pursuing. I can't give my opinion because my opinion doesn't count. It's competent, substantial evidence the staff recommendation did.
I'm asking for facts. I'm saying
Those are the
coming
facts.
from the Regions Bank
Those are the
to the
facts.
Subi building, and you want us to go back up to the residents, so the residents have these crazy buildings up, down, and not as the code said, which is scalability. We go from up to down into the residences, right?
Mr. Chair, there isn't a question. What we're now doing is arguing with the witness. I think the point's been made. If he has a specific question, he can ask the question.
Point made. Thank you.
Thank you.
David Winker.
Thank you. David Winker on behalf of the Ponce neighbors. Mr. DeUri, when did you register as a lobbyist on this project?
I have to check the public records.
How many meetings with city officials did you have as part of the process to get us here today?
Numerous.
Can you give me a number?
I don't have the number off the top of my head.
Was Mr. Morris present at any of those meetings?
Not that I recall.
Mr. Morris has never met with any city officials?
I'm sure Mr. Morris, if you check the public record, would reflect if he had meetings or not.
So at no meeting that you were at with public officials or city staff was Mr. Morris present?
Asked and answered. I would object to the question.
I think that is asked and answered, and I would sustain the
I'm perfect.
objection.
Yeah, no problem. And are you aware that Mr. Morris registered as a lobbyist?
The public record will reflect Mr. Morris's registration as a lobbyist.
But I'm asking, are you aware of it?
Yes.
And what date did he register?
I don't recall the exact date he registered as a lobbyist.
And your testimony today is that you're not aware that he had any meetings with public officials or city staff.
Mr. Chairman, you've asked it. You've asked.
I just want to clarify.
Same question over.
You don't need to clarify it. You've asked it already.
Thank you very much. Mr. Ruby, you have a chance to, a few minutes, I'm going to give you to rebuttal.
Yeah,
Look,
again, I just wanted to highlight a very simple question at the beginning of this process, because we've heard over and over again, we have to follow the rules, we have to follow the code. I can't build a metal roof, for example, and I understand that, because that's not how the code works. The code works and says you can make an application, and pursuant to the application, you have a process, and that is reviewed by staff, and staff gave the recommendation, and that's the law. And so now we have competent substantial evidence on our side because we changed our project. Before, staff did not support our project. And let me just say, we're talking about the height here. I don't want to get into the whole rigmarole about the project. We're just talking about the height. And before, we did not have recommendation. And so I wanted to make it really simple. And, you know, I saw that the cross-examination wasn't going to work. So I just said, you know, let's just have the conversation afterwards. The only comment I want to make from one of the residents was, it was said that there were abutting residential properties to this site. There is no abutting residential property to this site. There's no residential property on the block. There's no residential property on the block to the south of us. And that's one of the principal differences between what's going on across the street and what's going on our side of the street. And if you know where the folks are coming from, they're approximately 50 feet from the plaza. And I understand that's an issue for them. I also understand they're next to the hospital, okay? But when the context and character of a neighborhood is what it is today, you can't pretend it doesn't exist. And so that's why we got a recommendation, 149 feet, as opposed to 190 that we came in with, because we're the fourth, fifth, or sixth tallest building in the neighborhood. The decision you guys are going to make today is one of following the code, and it's only on the height. The code changed recently, but only in regards to zoning. The Plater-Zyber changes to the code did not touch the height that are in the land use component, okay? But again, we're just here for the height. No one denied the staff reports, and again, they actually admit that these taller buildings exist in the neighborhood. Not one person said we're the tallest building, second, third, fourth, or fifth tallest building. And in fact, these taller buildings are closer to them than our proposed project is. And that's why, with the basis of a staff report, you look at it, you look at competent substantial evidence, why we're not changing the context and character, even of the closest neighbors. The last thing I just want to say is Mr. Withers asked a question, excuse me, about the plaza and whether the land use, what the land use was prior to the approval of the project. The properties along Ponce were high commercial, and then the properties behind it, and I would allow staff to correct it if they need to, but the properties behind it were all low commercial, which is pink. And that's in the staff report. I just want to make sure, because you asked that question, I want to take a note. I try to be very respectful of the process, and I apologize if some of these questions became cumbersome or convoluted with other issues. But that's really what it is at the end of the day, just height and the context and character of the neighborhood, which everybody admits there are taller buildings than ours, some twice as tall, closer to them than our building is. So I thank you very much for your time.
Okay, thank you. At this point, we're going to close the public hearing process. I am going to open up to the board for board discussion. And Mr. Witters, you started last.
Can I interrupt for 1 second? Sorry, Chip.
You didn't have a chance to interrupt. No, I'm going to talk. I'll go interrupt.
I want to, is anybody from Public Works going to be able to answer any questions related to the slip lane today? If those questions come up, how will they be handled? No? I know that.
Don't believe we have any members from Public Works here to answer those questions.
Thanks for interrupting me. How'd you hurt your hand?
Boating accident.
Boating accident. Wow. Is it broken or?
Broken, lost a piece of the hand.
Oh. Sorry about that.
Mr. Chairman, I just want to, just 2 legal points I just wanted to just set the stage for. We are actually here only on the comprehensive plan item. The comprehensive plan item has a couple of unusual legal issues because the comprehensive plan is deemed to be the constitution of land use for Coral Gables. So the standing to object or to seek an objection to the comprehensive plan is you have to be an aggrieved or adversely affected party. And the definition in the statute is a little bit different than the common law statute for aggrieved party, and I would argue it's somewhat more liberalized. And it states that it means any person or local government that will suffer an adverse effect to an interest protected or furthered by the local government comprehensive plan, including interests related to health and safety, police, fire protection, service systems, density or intensities of development, transportation facilities, and healthcare facilities, equipment, or services. And here's the key point. The alleged adverse interests may be shared in common with other members of the community at large, but must exceed in degree the general interest in community goods shared by all persons. So it is somewhat more liberalized standard. The other thing that we've talked a lot about substantial competent evidence tonight. But actually for the comprehensive plan, in order to sustain it, it's based if it's fairly debatable. In other words, if the commission makes a decision on a particular comprehensive plan amendment, it's whether there's fair debate to whether they should have done it or not. So a little bit more liberal than even substantial competent evidence. So it's a little bit different than the other items that you've done. We've had zoning items, we had a site plan item, I believe, we had a TDR item. So we're really at the very highest level of planning here, which is the comprehensive plan item in it, and that's what's before the board tonight.
Mr. Chair, may I ask a point of clarification?
Sure.
So your first point, you were saying that only if you're immediately affected or you live close by is your, can you please clarify that? Because I didn't quite capture.
I'm going to actually read what it states, because what it says is the alleged adverse interests may be shared in common with other members of the community at large, but must exceed in degree the general interest in community goods shared by all persons. It also goes on to say the term includes, of course, the owner, developer, or applicant for a development order. So it's really your judge to decide whether their interest exceeds that of the entire Coral Gables community.
Mr. Witters, go ahead and proceed.
I didn't know if the counselor wanted to, did you have something you wanted to say before?
He's just pacing I think.
No, but it has to be based on fact. It can't be based on opinion. Would you agree, Mr. Collier?
Well, I will give you a case, and you can decide. There's a case called Blumenthal, and there was a question about whether in that case was a density question, and a citizen got up and said, "You're going from 50 units per acre down to 12 units per acre, and I think the line should be here because this is what the neighborhood is now." And the court said that didn't require an expert. They had an observation of what they saw the density in the neighborhood was, and they saw it from one end to the other end. So the court said that that person was competent to be able to testify as to where that line should be drawn. So and it is true that a department's recommendation is deemed to be substantial competent evidence. But as I said at the last hearing, that is not necessarily all the evidence, and the board doesn't necessarily have to rubber stamp a department recommendation if the board believes that it has heard testimony that would go a different way. So it's really in your hands.
Thank you.
Okay, after 3 interruptions, I'll proceed now.
Please.
Nothing's really changed my mind. One thing that really jumped out at me tonight is I must have heard, and I didn't notice it the last time. I must have heard 5 or 6 or 10 different accents from the neighbors, different countries, and Coral Gables has changed a lot, and it's changed for the better. And the one thing that was really impressive to me was how this group of neighbors that obviously came from different origins, based on their accents, have lived in this area for years and years and years and have built a community and have built a neighborhood. And I think that's pretty cool. And I commend you for that. I really, really mean that from the bottom of my heart. In saying that, I was going to apologize to staff because I kind of emasculated them I kind of beat them up a little bit last meeting about the whole, and this plays into what I think you're saying, is none of staff's counter arguments to changing the code are based in fact. They're all based in subjective opinion, in my subjective opinion. And I started going down these points, and for instance, it says that it's going to reduce traffic in the area by encouraging residents to work where they live, walk, bike, or train. Well, we never did a traffic study, so I really don't know how a fact can be made that it would reduce traffic. Because it's subjective that because this kind of mixed use subjectively reduces traffic. Now, am I wrong in making that statement? I don't want to go in the wrong direction here, but I'm just, that's a high, you don't have to answer that question if you don't want to, but.
Good.
Okay.
No,
I know I'm putting the whole thing.
I think the board has to express its own
don't
feelings
answer
about
the
it.
question. Okay. Secondly, any other effect that the city determines is relevant to the city commission's decision, not our decision, but the city commission's decision on the application. So I guess my question is, how much weight do the neighbors have when they present what's relevant to them and how it affects their quality of life? Obviously, it affects them a great deal. I don't see that staff took that into consideration when they changed the zoning code. Any objective says whether it specifically advances any objective or policy of the comprehensive land use plan. And then you read the staff evaluation. The comprehensive plan amendment from commercial low-rise intensity to commercial high-rise facilitates a taller building to advance the objectives and policies in multiple comprehensive plan elements and encourage the mixed-use development of urban housing near downtown that reduces the need to drive. How does that affect the neighbors? How does that objective affect the group of neighbors that are the most effective? You don't have to answer that question because he's told me you're not supposed to answer that question. And then the last thing is here's number 2, whether it internally consists with the comprehensive land use plan. Well, the answer is the proposed mixed-use redevelopment is consistent with the commercial high-use land use. Of course it is. It's a high-rise. It's going to be consistent with the high-rise land use, as it allows for mixed-use development. So I guess the bottom line, and the reason I kind of went on a little bit about this is I'm still not totally convinced that this project, and I've known Alan a long time, that this project, really meets the criteria of allowing a staff recommendation on this project. And so I'm not convinced that anything I've heard tonight changes my opinion on the changing of this land use. I'm finished.
Thank you, Mr. Witters. Mr. Torres, do you want to continue?
So I have a lot to catch up because you guys had a very strong 2 hours as I was on a plane. But I do have a lot to cover, so bear with me here. One thing you guys did, which I started out the conversation, is approving TDRs and approving the alley vacation already. I'm of the opinion that those two things should never happen. I think that you actually went against your own statements because, Mr. Chair, because you started the conversation saying these things are give and take, and what do you give us for the alley is something that's been done before. You questioned it, and so if you're giving that away already by approving the TDRs, you just gave away the bargaining that you suggested would be there on a project. So this project still is being negotiated. The TDRs are off the table. That's why I started the conversation. What is the order of this going to be? At this point, you put it, this is the last item, which I think should have been the first item.
And let me address it, because since you're going straight, I was opposed on closing university. And the TDRs that they came with is that was the city considered the super TDRs that could be applicable anywhere. Correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Collier. Anywhere throughout city of Coral Gables.
Yeah, yes, I believe that's correct. I'd like to confirm with the department, though. I don't know whether they were proposing to use super TDRs for this project. Is that correct?
My recollection is that
super TDRs were issued because it was the city was able to save an environmental piece of property.
Of 67 and 136, and that current owner was given the right to sell those TDRs. And the alley specifically, it was a small piece of the alley, and they were doing a plaza, if you want to call it, in front of the building that was beneficial. So I was not going against my own recommendation. It was something that they had the right to do with the TDRs.
Right. As a whole, I think that the project should be looked at all comprehensively, and I think that what drives this is usually the site plan approval and the comprehensive approval. Those things should drive the project. If the project merits, then these other things sort of follow. I think that's the way I've sort of seen these projects in the past, and I think that's the way this one should have been handled, but we're already here. So we're looking specifically and only right now to the comp plan, which basically, as I understand it, deals with height. And nobody today discussed the word density. Nobody today discussed FAR, and all I heard, and I took notes, is a lot of it was height, more height. The other issue that I heard from one speaker was that this project would bring traffic and bring other impacts. So I judge this specifically for impact. I think most of these projects are judged from an impact perspective, and I think that's what I'm hearing. This is what is the impact on the community from this project. So it boils down to height. If that's the fight, then I'm going to look at this from a bigger perspective, which is historical, and what has been the trend, and what's the fight about? Because to me, again, what is the quality of the project? How many units are coming forth? What's the traffic impact going to be? And as I started to look at this project, I find benefits to some of these things as opposed to what other things could be brought here. I said this earlier, 80 units of high quality for sale, it's a good thing. And that does not, compared to what other things could come here, create more of an impact from a traffic perspective. I think it actually helps. So if I was to say what could come here, I think this is not a bad thing on that level. Suggesting 80 high-end units on that merit, I think it's a good thing. When you look at the FAR, they're gonna probably put the FAR in there no matter what. And I think that the impact comes from the FAR, mostly. What does it mean is square footage. I think if you put that 187,000 square feet of footage in there somehow, what's left? What's left is, again, the height is the probably issue, and that deals with architecture, that deals with other things. To me, it brings me back to scale, it brings me back to urban planning, it brings me back to things that are relevant to architecture, to city planning, to urban streetscapes, and things that I haven't heard anybody say. So all I have is, I have a problem with height. I have a problem with height, it's impacting me. In what way is the impact? I don't necessarily understand the impact, except there's a building that's high and people don't like it. So, you know, I started to feel this out and in which way I could really understand it, and it goes back to history. And what does this mean? Well, pretty much every project that goes through this city has to go through a site plan approval and all these other approvals, which means they get negotiated. And the commission has to approve something that is usually and always negotiated. And I started to think of all the projects that we look and feel every day, and that goes to the Colonnade, goes to the Columbus Center, it goes to the Hyatt, it goes to the Merrick Park Village, it goes to 396 Alhambra, Alan Morris Building. I believe that probably every building I mentioned has been negotiated, and it has had variances and approvals of many different types. Do we hate these buildings? Are these buildings affecting us positively or negatively? I think they're affecting us positively. I see a lot of negativity about a lot of things that we have to step back and say, what is the trend here, guys? What's going on? So to further do that, I went back and found, somehow, a master plan proposal for the city of Coral Gables from 1962, addressed to the city manager, on the discussion of what the master plan of this city should be on the same thing of land use. And it's an interesting, this is unbelievable. What I found is gold. It teaches you what has happened in Coral Gables for the last 60-some years. How the traffic studies were being discussed, how parking issues were being discussed, how Miracle Mile was being discussed, how the traffic on Lejeune and Miracle Mile was already an issue. Issues where traffic going through our city affects us tremendously, through Miracle Mile, through Ponce, everybody cuts through. It's already in here. All these issues are in here. So this is nothing new. We're discussing things that have been discussed for 60 years, and it goes to, this is the item that brings it back. They're talking about multi-story buildings. And in this paragraph says, it is believed that neither the demand for land nor cost of land in the Coral Gables Central Business District has advanced enough at this time to warrant complete removal of all restrictions controlling building heights. At the time, they were not willing to deal with building heights because that problem had not surfaced. And why was that? Because cars had just taken over. We're dealing with parking issues at the time. Parking garages were starting to happen. And buildings needed to deal with how to deal with their garages and how they're going to put those garages in those buildings and what is the shape of the building going to look like. And people were moving out of downtown. The shops were closing because Dayland had just opened, and those are the problems that were happening. We have similar problems in some senses, but we have some other problems in other senses. So, you know, I bring this down to, these are issues that we've been having for years and years and years. I go back to the quality of the project. What is the quality of this project? And that's what I want to bring the discussion to, is what is being proffered here, what is being put here forth. And one of the big issues for me is what is the give? You discussed this, Robert, last time. What is the give by the developer? What's going on here? The deal with this park across the street is a big deal. You know, I know you're giving $1 million. I don't know whether you're going to have the slip lane or not, and that to me is the big deal because it changes dramatically how you enter and exit the building. It deals with that building being a setback that's very tight or a setback that doesn't even matter anymore because you have a park in front of you. So I think that's a big deal. And if you don't have that slip lane. If you just have a small sidewalk, that could be a little different than being among a huge park with piece of art. The other thing is, is there room? You mentioned last time there was room for maybe dropping the height. And I'm not suggesting that this height is perfect. I'm not trying to say that this building stands perfect at 140. Is there still room for massaging the height a little bit, number one? And two, is there still room to add more benefits to the community by way of improving the intersections, the medians on ponds, or anything else that can be done that has not been brought up to sweeten the pot? Because, again, I don't think the driving force for me is height. I don't think, you're in the widest boulevard, or one of the widest boulevard in the city. Is height an issue in urbanscapes that have wide boulevards? Boulevards, not streets, boulevards. Where's the effect of the height here? And I'm being very specific to this project. I'm not for height, but I'm being specific to this project. In this particular project, is this that bad of a height issue to change this and make it so that this project can work? Those are my points. I'd like to hear from the developer at some point whether there's any other offers or any other ability to massage this a little bit, or is this the way that you guys want to make it go? Or
Mr. Chairman, through the chair, I just want to explain something I made at the last meeting about the issue of the comp plan. You can't condition the comp plan.
Mm-hmm.
You could condition the site plan. He could conceivably proffer a covenant, a voluntary covenant in connection with the comp plan, but the comp plan can't be conditioned like you would deal with a site plan. So because we've already dealt with those items, all we have left is the comp plan. So, the board can probably add to their recommendation that they feel that something more should be done with the zoning items or the site plan, but we're kind of limited when we're dealing only with the comp plan.
Okay.
It's different.
Two quick points. One, ultimately, the slip lane, we're going to put that money in, and it's up to the city to direct us on what they want, whether they want the slip lane. I think definitely they're going to want to get rid of those parking spaces that are backing into the slip lane, which is, obviously, I would never park there. And then number two, between the two meetings, we went back and looked at the height. And, I would quote Armando Colina, who presented also on a height issue just north of us, which is that when you do these high-end luxury units, you can't do the Brickell-style 8-foot rentals. You need the height in the unit to go down to 80 of them so you can make the luxury product work. And that really wasn't our idea. That was born of meetings that I think many folks here were part of, and the neighborhood suggested the condominium. And so we found a way to lower it from 190 to 149, but we had to stop there so we could still do the luxury units. That was it. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Muro?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good evening, everyone. I do want to make several comments this evening. I think the first thing I wanted to start with, I heard a lot of the members of the public who spoke talk about how we here as the Planning and Zoning Board members are, tasked with fiduciary duties and responsibilities. There was talk about democracy, and there was talk about holding the line. And I did want to communicate to those members of the community, those especially who took the time to come out here tonight, that when I learned about this meeting, I did try to oppose the meeting. I reached out to the city attorney's office and I expressed that I wanted to do so. I was told that, unfortunately, because the city attorney had already opined, that basically I was told why, and I understand the whole pari-materia and the reason why we have to do it, but basically what I was told was that the board failed to make a recommendation and that therefore, we had not done our job, right? And I think that in reality, that's not what happened. We were ill-advised, and with all due respect to Mr. Collar, as a new board member here, this is my first year serving. I do trust in what, the advice that we receive. And we did touch on this during the last meeting of this. We had this 3-2 vote that it would just go to commission without our recommendation. And we discussed it, yet it happened. And then here we are now. I was not in favor of having this meeting all over again. It's like Groundhog Day, only it's not Groundhog Day because things went differently, right? Groundhog Day, the same thing happened over and over again. Well, here, just like I was opposed to, I did not think that we should have, we should do anything differently than what we did last time with Mr. DeJury, cross-examining the members of the public who spoke. I also was not in favor of the members of the public who spoke cross-examining Mr. DeJury because, again, we didn't do it last time, and we were able to, have enough information and discussion amongst ourselves. In fact, in a previous meeting, we also had this, we were here till 10:30, I think, last time on this very issue. But there was another matter that came before us that I found that we were talking about 6 inches. You guys remember for like an hour about 6 inches, only to learn in the later meeting that, the planning and zoning director never told us it didn't really matter about the 6 inches because at the end of the day, there was another provision that was going to make it higher. And so I expressed my concern because as a city, as a board member on this city, my concern is the trust that the city, that residents have in our government, in our city, and we need to be able to protect that trust. And I don't think that we're doing a very good job of that when we as members received advice that is not accurate or reflective of what should be, or not completely told by city staff about, hey, don't spend 30 minutes on this 6 inches because it doesn't really matter. I think that's information that we all could have benefited from and saved much time on. I also think that if we were going to go ahead and move forward with this meeting as we did tonight, then, the city making a mistake, we didn't, mistakes happen. Nobody should be held to absolutely perfect standard, but definitely a high standard. And if we do make a mistake, let's turn around and say, let's work with the residents and let's postpone this meeting to August. The city attorney also went, and that's Ms. Soler Ramos, went out of her way to say, oh, the applicant wasn't in favor of us having this meeting. I have a hard time believing that because I think that the applicant could have said, well, you know what, we've done this 3 times, I'm not going to do it again, let it go to commission without a recommendation, because that was the other option. I also, I got a call back after I sent my email to the city attorney in opposition of this meeting saying that, oh, this is the reason why. And I asked, I said, are you telling me that there is no remedy, no way for me to oppose this meeting as a board member? There's nothing, there's no avenue that I can seek to oppose this meeting because Madam City Attorney has opined. And I asked, and they said that I couldn't, and I asked for that in writing from Mr. Ceballos. I'm still waiting for the response in writing that there is no avenue, there's no way for me to voice my opposition. There's no process by which I can do that. And again, as a new member, I depend on the city attorney's office to, give us the right advice, the right counsel, right? And also to, whatever you say with your words, you should be able to put in writing. So that was a concern for me, and I just wanted the community to know that I also found that, hey, if we're going to go through with this meeting because of whatever the law is or the code says, I understand that, but I think we should have worked with the community a little bit more. And like a lot of the speaker said today, some people are on vacation, some people weren't able to make it. So that's that part of it. The other side that I want to talk about, and let me look at my notes, is I don't see this to be a very difficult process. I don't think, like, Mr. Withers said, my mind really wasn't changed in this presentation. And also, I think one of the speakers said that, we go through a long-term process when it comes to agreeing on what the code is. And, there's processes that we have to follow as residents. And I also happen to like our rules and regulations. So I don't see why it's so hard for us to say that, hey, we need to stay within the code that we go through so much time to put in place. The other thing that saddens me is to hear that so many people aren't here or haven't been part of the process because of the apathy that's created. And I think that goes back to the lack of trust that there is in the city. And and in not just in the boards, but also in the commission, because that tells me that people feel that they're not being heard. I will also say that he who knows the charter and he who knows the code is king, and the things that I have heard coming, from the applicant are basically, they're sticking to the code and they're sticking to facts. And in the interest of facts, and I hope I don't forget anything else I wanted to say, because there's so many things that have come to me right now. When Mr. City Attorney had said about things that affect everybody in the city, he mentioned fire, and I want to go ahead and mention fire. Currently, the city of Coral Gables is operating with 11 firefighters short of what the national standard is. And it is a clear fact that bigger buildings create more hazards. So yes, if you have a taller building, it's going to create a risk, and a risk that we are already living with right now, because with all these high rises, like a lot of people mentioned, right? The plaza's not completely full. There's the Lifetime buildings. There's so many buildings that we have not yet begun to feel the impact of all these buildings. And from a public safety standpoint, if we're going to talk about how it affects the neighbors who live in the area, but affects all of Coral Gables, believe me, if your house is burning in the North Gables and there's a problem in the South Gables and we're short 11 firefighters, either both residences are going to burn and we might lose a few firefighters. So this is a huge public safety issue. I would like to see the community members who are here not just come before this board, but come before the commission, because this board cannot address the firefighter issue. But it is a public safety issue, and it is something that is factual, that we are short on that national level. And since we wanted to talk about facts and how this project being double the size of, the code, that is a fact that affects us all. And again, I really hope that the other question I asked the city attorney's office, I said, well, us having this meeting all over again, could that possibly change the outcome that was reached in the last meeting? And they said yes. And I said, well, even more so, that is the reason why I'm concerned and opposed to having this meeting, because we've beat this dead horse 100 times. And we've come to this conclusion. It was a majority of the vote, right, of the members that were present. And so I would be really disappointed in this board if we reached a different conclusion for this project, because I think that it would completely finish destroying the faith that the community has in us as a board, as a city, the staff recommendations. Again, I heard what my colleague Chip Withers was saying about staff recommendations. I also don't understand how the staff came to these conclusions. I also heard what my colleague Benny Torrey, in fact, I saw Benny Torrey, we've had this meeting 4 times. He was here looking through the numbers. He was working the papers the entire time. And I heard what he said about these were the concerns 60 years ago. And I think that's a great point to make. We have always been the kind of community that has cared for quality of life. I don't remember her name. I think it was Teresita. I don't remember her last name. She said that she moved here from West Kendall 17 years ago. I moved here 16 years ago from West Kendall, and I did that for quality of life. And I think that I know that maybe that's not in the code, but it's in my code, and I think about that, and I see that it's an important thing. It's about the community that we are. I hope that we don't leave out community. Mr. Chair, I thank you so much for indulging me for speaking so long, but I did want to say, make those remarks, especially to all of those who are here or who are listening to us online for the 4th time. Thank you.
Mr. Revolta, or you want to go last?
No. Alex was telling me.
Mr. Bacello, go ahead.
Chairman, I unfortunately wasn't here the prior meeting, June 6th, but I did have the pleasure of watching the full recording. I did hear all the comments, both in support and against this project during that meeting. I see here we have Mayor Dorothy Thompson, mother-in-law of Alan Morris. I think one resident said it best. I don't know which one it was, but we can agree that Mr. Morris does build quality projects. We talked about the one in Alhambra. I think it was Chip Withers in the last meeting that said that project in itself is definitely one of the more immaculate buildings here in the city of Coral Gables. But that's not the issue before us. As we know, the issue before us is height. And as many of you voice your concerns with, is the code calls for 77 feet. I would like, as as an individual of the zoning board, I'm in favor of smart and controlled development. I think one of the residents had mentioned as well, reasonable development. I like that phrase, and I wrote it down in my notes because it's one that, again, makes sense with how a community should grow. But with that said, I think 149 feet is a little excessive for that area. That's just my takes. Again, I would like to see this project. I'm not opposed to an increase in height, a 10, 20%. I think Mr. Torre made a good point as to a benefit to the community, whether through traffic, parks, et cetera. I'd like to see that. But personally, at the 149 feet mark, I tend to, stay a little back from that, as the resident said. But more importantly, I would like to see, again, he mentioned comments as to negotiations or a way of bringing that closer to the 77 mark. So with that, I conclude.
Thank you very much. Mr. Revuelta?
Thank you. What is the city requirement for public notice in terms of radius? Is it 500 feet, 1,000 feet? Just so I have an understanding of that.
1,500 feet for a change of land use.
I'm sorry?
1,500 feet for a change of land use.
1,500 feet radius or diameter? Radius.
Radius.
Radius, okay. I was using 500 feet, which is what Mr. Winkler was saying, and I was having a hard time coming up with actually 150 rooftops. That's why I was asking if it's 1,500 feet, I guess, but I was trying to understand the participation, and I was keeping track of the speakers, and there's one from Vizcaya, one from Cadima, 5 from Alessio, 3 from San Sebastian, and one from San Sebastian, but it's not a resident, it's a property owner. I did not hear anybody from Santander, Malaga, Caldonia, Palermo, Romano, Sarto, Camilo, or Aledo. If I'm making a mistake, I'm perfectly happy to be corrected. But be that as it may, I'm just surprised at the people that are really close to this property. There seem to be more people away from this property that are here in opposition than people that are close to it, and I will wait for Mr. Winkler list of the 150 people that he's representing. I drive through this area almost every day because I live in Castile Avenue in Cordova. I have my offices in Coconut Grove, and I believe that the intersection of University Drive and Ponce, when it turns, I hope that whatever happens with this property, I hope that's eliminated. It is an accident or accidents waiting to happen if some haven't happened before. So for that, I happen to believe that consolidating that, eliminating that, and creating some sort of a plaza. There's a little green area park there, but I think that turn needs to be eliminated, and somehow the sweep from Ponce to University Drive needs to be a bigger radius. But I think if the project goes anywhere, whoever develops the property, I think that should be addressed, and that's just my personal opinion as a citizen, as somebody that drives there all the time, and as an architect. I continue to harp, and forgive me for boring you with this, that the biggest threat to the neighborhood to the south is Block 34. And there is a big parking lot there, zone MX3, that can basically go with med bonuses to 193 feet. To me, that's like the line that should have never been there. Hence what last time I voted in favor of the item with a height restriction. I do believe that if we approve a project on Lot 29 that has a height restriction, that will help control what will happen with Block 34 when a developer comes in and said, I got MX3. I want to actually zone the west of this Lot 34 into MX3. And that block is on Santander Avenue, a block away from San Sebastian, Romano, Sarto, Camilo, Aledo, and all of the neighbors. To me, that is the biggest danger in this plan. And I have failed to try to gather support from everybody into trying to do something about this. Hence, I believe that whether it's 149 feet or 140 feet, I think the project can work on 140 feet, by the way. most of the work that we do, it's condominium work. And understanding a little bit of what the project is being proposed, I believe that that this project could work at 140 feet for those of you that think that 150, 149 is 150 for all practical matters, could work. And I think setting the precedent that this cannot go any higher than 140 feet, I'm using 140 feet, it could be 135, 136, whatever, it's a good precedent because I think the biggest danger for the neighborhood is Block 34. And just to address something, I've been in architecture for about 40 years and done a lot of condos. Condos are one of the safest prototypes. I believe the chair also has done a lot of condos. And as much as I agree that the city needs to look at making sure that they're up to the standards, nation standards in their fire department, I don't believe that this building, as an 80-unit condominium, presents any danger given the safety factors that I know, and safety factor over safety factor over safety factor, that this building's, I never had a condo that we've done catch on fire. So I'm just for putting it into perspective. And I think 80 units, assuming that they're occupied 365 days of the year, with 2 cars, that's 160 cars. I am hard pressed to convince myself that at 100% occupancy, 365 days of the year, with 2 cars, 160 cars will have a major impact on their neighborhood. And as we have discussed before, we're discussing height. I don't believe the 149 is a problem. I will be willing to vote in favor of 140. But I think it's a good precedent to control Block 29 to a height that is much less than 193 with the Met bonuses, because we don't know what the city commission is going to do. And I have to tell you, again, this is probably the 4th or 5th meeting that I bring this up, that I am very concerned about Block 34 and that parking lot being on MX3, and it can go to 193 feet. So with that, I'll just wait to hear from the chairman.
Thank you, Mr.
Mr. Chair, I have questions of Mr. Revolta, since we're only allowed to talk right here, if I could.
Go ahead.
I just wanted to say cross-examination. No, I just wanted to say that you said that you didn't think that 160 cars, but when you say that, are you taking into consideration the fact that all these other buildings have not yet to be occupied, and you add the 160 with the 300 and the other 160, and you still come to the conclusion that that's not going to be a traffic problem in this area?
Well, I'm not a traffic consultant, and since we're discussing this property, had I had the opportunity to be sitting here for the prior projects, I probably would have made an argument for that. I don't want to rehash this thing, but every time I drive through Malaga and I see this big building, 70 feet, 60 feet away from single-family homes, it drives me nuts. I haven't spent the time and the energy to see how this happened. At this point, it would be useless for me to look back. But I strongly feel that, number one, this building is not going to be occupied 365 days of the year. It's not going to be occupied 100%. And the traffic is going to be less than 160 cars. And I do believe to basically touch on the point that Mr. Withers was talking about, I think that the more that you bring in residential into a city, the more people will walk and not use the car. And again, I'm not an urbanist, I'm not a traffic consultant, but I can tell you that from a planning perspective, maybe putting it in the context that, A, more housing is going to decrease the parking. Well, no, but more housing, I believe, has been proven that concentrating residential in cities promotes pedestrian and promotes businesses that people walk to. So that's as much as I can contribute.
And then the other thing that you had said regarding the safety of condos, I mean, I agree with what you're saying about safety of condos. We're not New York City, right, with gas lines and different things of that nature. But what I'm talking about, what I'm speaking to, is that it's not the building that causes the fire, it's people. And, negligence or just accidents. I mean, I'll tell you, the other day, my son loves to make mac and cheese in those little containers, right? You pop them in the microwave. He forgot to put water in them. Well, our apartment building almost caught on fire, and we only have 6 stories in our apartment building on Majorca. So it wasn't the building that was going to cause a fire. It was my 14-year-old son that was going to cause a fire. So I'd say I agree with buildings don't cause fires and they're safe, but people do. And then the last thing I just wanted to say, I don't think it's fair that we count the number of people who aren't here from these streets, especially since we know that everyone's on vacation. We didn't, as a city, postpone the meeting till August. I was just going to say, I just think that if we were to count all the people who were here last time, that we were here till 10:30 p.m., I think that would be more of an accurate statement, especially with all the apathy that there is, and that's all I wanted to say. Thank you,
Claudia, I
Mr.
think
Chair.
you already heard you on that.
Yep.
Please.
I'm done.
Let me give the opportunity to Mr. Eisenstadt, the real chairman, who's remotely to have something to say. Go ahead, Mr. Eisenstadt.
First of all, I'd like to thank the board for letting me participate with the special exception. I felt it's important for me to be here since I was at the original meeting. I have gone ahead and heard again all the testimony, whether it was presented by the applicant or the testimony that was presented by the neighbors and so forth. I have served for over 30 years in various boards with the city of Coral Gables. I have served many times with Mr. Behar on a couple of zoning code rewrites. And what I can tell you, and I'm not saying this politically, what I can tell you from what I have heard by testimony from both sides, my vote and how I feel is still the same as it was before. I also want to take the opportunity to thank Robert for stepping in as the chair. And I just want to keep it brief and thank everybody for coming. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, and thank you for not being here tonight. Look, I want to say for the record that I was a member of the Plan Zoning Board when the plaza came in, and I opposed that project, and so did Mr. Eisenstadt. That was never a project that we felt that it was appropriate here. I'm gonna use the same words that I used last time, and there's gonna be a lot of people that are gonna be disappointed in what I am gonna say, but it is what it is. I had a problem last time with the height on this project, and I still have a problem with the height of this project. I think that it is good to have a project, but not at the height that they're proposing to do this project. I offered last time to the applicant to lower it, and Vinny, I don't know if you read the record, but I did offer to lower that. I want to say, and if I could go back to the record, from 150 to like 120, and there was no. So my mind has not been changed. I still believe that the project could be a good project, but not at the height that is being proposed. It has not changed my mind. It would not, unfortunately, for the applicant, change my mind tonight. I am willing to consider a much lower project, but not at nowhere near what we're being proposed. What I will do now is I will entertain a motion from the board so we could continue and move forward.
I'd like to make that motion, Mr. Chair. And that's the same motion I made last time, and it's a motion to deny as presented.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Okay. Mr. Collier, at this point, we have a motion and a second.
Yes, Mr. Chair, I'd just like to make 2 very quick comments. Ms. Moreau, it was my mistake. I've sat with this board for 7 years. After the vote, I went back and I realized we had a problem. I immediately told the city attorney. I don't think in the 7 years that I've sat with this board, I don't think I've ever made a mistake before, but I told the city attorney I felt this needed to come back here because at this point, it wasn't a recommendation. You had no recommendation. That I did say the night of the meeting. I also said at the night of the meeting, you can still try to get 4 members to vote for a motion if there was a motion. There was no motion. So it was my mistake, and I felt it needed to be fixed, in my opinion. It wasn't a failure of the board that you didn't have a recommendation. It's the way our code is written that requires 4 votes. There was no failure on this board's part in how they conducted their activity. And I just want to make sure that you are not left with any impression that the city attorney's office ever felt that this board did not do its responsibilities. You were here till, I think it was 10:30, the previous meeting. So I just wanted to make that clear.
And thank you for saying that. I really appreciate it. And you know what? Everybody makes mistakes. I think once in 7 years is a pretty good average.
Not a terrible record, but I'm not a robot.
Absolutely. And I just want to say that it was Mr. Ceballos who said that we had failed to, do our job.
Well,
and,
I don't know why he would say that. I know Mr. Ceballos. I don't think if he said it, it was a misinterpretation. You did your job. You voted 3-2, and I'm not sure if anybody would have changed their vote at that time anyway. So regardless, we're here. We have 7 members voting, so we're going to have a 4-3 or 4-2 or however many votes it is, a recommendation tonight. So there's a motion
and a second
to recommend denial of the comprehensive plan amendment.
Jill, can you please call the roll?
Luis Revuelta,
No.
Vinnie Torre,
No.
Chip Withers,
Yes.
Alex Bucello,
Yes.
Claudia Miro,
Yes.
A.B. Eisenstadt,
Yes.
Robert Behar.
Yes.
It's a 5-2 vote to deny.
5-2.
Mr. Chairman, a motion to adjourn is always in order.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you.